people, right, who do that. So that's the third area, consumer interaction. And then fourth, even the products themselves, a smart washing machine, a smart oven, and so on. So those are the four areas. What we do there, how we look into it is um, there's two main areas how you can differentiate. Are you applying AI to hold up with the competition because everyone is doing that? Or are you applying AI really to differentiate yourself from the competition? Is that something according to your core competence, according to your own competitive advantage? That's where we're differentiating. If it's more the second one, if it's about one of the something that should give us our competitive advantage, we go more for building, also for partnering. If it's something that's just to keep up, then it's more about the buying because it's basically something that everyone that you can easily purchase and gain from the market.
I think so. It's good that you mentioned that how many of us use the chat GPT. It's become one of the additional source to make a decision or at least shortlist the decision that what should we buy, which brand should we buy. It's an interesting insight that there's an additional source to make a decision on that. But only if we come to you. And one interesting angle that we look at is that buy often looks faster on paper, right? But it's harder on the integration. But if you look at what's the time you choose to build, even though the buy looked easier, and why was that the right call? It will be good to hear from you when you look at from a platform or from a semicon industry.
Thank you, Rajat. Appreciate you inviting us and being part of this is great. But if you noticed, Rajat introduced us a semicon and chip company. I just wanted to differentiate a little bit. We are a full stack AI platform computing company. We accelerate across domains and work at the intersection of simulating the real world in a digital environment. We simulate physics of that world in that digital environment. And then we simulate intelligence in that digital world. So essentially, we work at the intersection of that, accelerating across these domains. Yeah, sorry about that. Great to be here. Fundamentally, if I have to answer this, I would need to build on to the first question which you asked. Now, there, I think, at this point of time of evolution of AI, VR, I think we need to look at a new North Star for answering that question. The question is then, um, if you are looking at AI as production of intelligence, you're basically then looking at building a factory for producing that intelligence. The moment you use that constraint and understand this core critical to your enterprise, you are now shifting your focus from what you want to produce and how do you produce this better. That's your outlook to scale it, right? And then you construct that factory the way you would construct your factory. You build the core underlying infrastructure and machinery by partnering with the factory builder, which you would bet. In this particular case, it would be the infrastructure provisioning for the compute, the integration of that compute and the networking part of it. And then you will focus on building your IP on it, which differentiates for you. This is where you put your efforts to build the intelligence on that core infrastructure. And then you would partner or buy based on the strategic nature of that for the non-core, non-strategic areas of your business operations. From that perspective, you again take the lens on the question you asked me. Then it's no more so much of a decision metrics, right? It becomes easy for you to take. Infrastructure, you would obviously partner. You're not going to build your factory's machinery. And there also you would take a strategic call on how you're building it from a perspective of, typical trade-offs of what you are building, whether you want to build it on-prem for you to build that core latency infrastructure scale out cost outlook, or you partner with a hyperscaler if your time to solution velocity requirement is higher, right? And that's how you would mitigate that risk. Fine. Just sorry for giving you a long answer.
Before moving forward, are you audible at the end? Okay.
Oh, I'm so sorry.
This is a mic.
Is it better?
Okay.
Oh, really close.
So you mentioned about the IP versus building the IP versus a partnership, but how are you looking at the current scenario in the ecosystem when you speak to the customers or even on the technology partner side? What is the main motion at the moment going on?
So the velocity of transformation in the AI ecosystem is unprecedented. And honestly, we have seen this transition across technology curves through our lifetime itself, right? For the last 30 years, you look at transition happening every 5 to 6 years. But with AI, the transition has been in this scene of 2 years. Now, almost 10 years now, from 2015 onwards, we were in the process of building the core foundations of AI. Then it was primarily about training the model and then building core functionalities into that model. In the process, in the midterm of that, right,
Yeah.
around 2.5 years back, um, major impetus came to us when we moved from transformers having the capability of training at the first level to having them the capability of reasoning on top of that. That's fundamentally transformative. The moment you did that, then the scaling law of the underlying infrastructure requirement, which was at that point in time just operating on the more parameters, more compute, more intelligence, one shot you get at the core underlying foundation model to scaling and on the application in real time. So saying Rainer today, when he asked ChatGPT, that ChatGPT is thinking on his question, right? It is not giving a one shot answer. That now shifts the scaling to real time scaling requirement on the compute. Now, in order to build that real time scaling, you need to now take the trained model and then train it post the training to have that reasoning capability. That now shifts the scaling law to three of them, right? So pre-training scaling, post-training scaling, and scaling on real-time inference. So you would need to look at what you're wanting to do, whether it's core and strategic, and build it. The problem is it needs the mindset from the leadership that is core to us and the commitment for supporting that. You need to have an internal assessment of your capabilities so that the people, the processes, and the core foundation to run your factory is there. You need the core MLOps team who manages your infrastructure, the model builders who builds that competency for you and operates it, and then the culture to support this top down. Right. So
Got it. And Vardhini, coming to you and picking some keywords from what Oni mentioned, the mindset of the leadership, the people and the processes. How are you seeing that in the ecosystem when you interact with the leaders? Are they confident or they're nervous about the AI capabilities on the platform beyond the chat GPT or the perplexity? So how you see that?
I think I would put it this way: there is a lot of excitement, there's also a lot of anxiety, and there is, of course, FOMO, right? That's
my phone.
oh, okay. Yeah. Am I audible back there? Yeah. Okay. So there's a lot of that going on. And I was doing a small research project with some of my collaborators on trying to understand how organizations are actually preparing for this. You know, digitalization in the AI age. Digitalization is a term that we've been hearing for 2 decades now. But what is it that's really happening now in the AI age? And one of the key differences is really about how do you evangelize AI within the organization? Now, this is coming up as a constant common thread in all the conversations, right? And this starts right at the board level and the CXO level, right? How do you get that mindset? How do you get the organization right from the top all the way to the bottom through the rank and file employees to be oriented in this direction? And it does not happen automatically. Though there is a lot of buzz in the environment, it does not happen automatically. So the responses have been, for instance, bringing in independent directors at the board level who have this kind of a background, especially if you are leading a legacy company, a traditional manufacturing company that's not a native digital. How can you infuse this thinking right at the top? So, one way of doing that is really bringing in a strong independent director who has this kind of a background and who can give that push. So that is very important because at the top management level, at the board level, you need that. A lot of some companies are also bringing in CDOs, chief digital officers, and in many cases the CIO, the information officer, is taking on this additional responsibility of being the digital officer, CDIO. But it's also being called out very explicitly because it's important to shine the spotlight and say this is very important. So it's not just about the title, but it's about what that title communicates to the rest of the organization, right? So that entire creating that executive level position, focusing on digital, this is very important. Then going down to the rest of the organization, also you need to evangelize, the idea of AI, right? And the challenge I feel is greater for companies that are traditionally from manufacturing backgrounds, etc., as opposed to digital natives. So there are two, three things that companies are trying, and nobody has fully figured it out. Like I said, there is a lot of excitement, there's a lot of anxiety also. But some of the early experiments have been around, okay, we have the board, we have the CDO, CIO, etc. Now, how do we bring consensus and commitment across the leadership? So people are forming AI councils, innovation councils that actually rallies the entire organization around this agenda. Then further lower down in the organization, it's about saying, okay, how do I train people? How do I upskill people? Right? How do I bring in new talent that is already familiar with this? And this requires a lot of consistent effort. And I'll give you my own personal example because I'm from IIM Bangalore, and education is a sector that's been, in a significant way, going to be affected by AI, right? So we are all constantly rethinking, what do we do as teachers? What do we do as researchers? How is our life changing? Now, despite being sort of plugged into this, it doesn't come naturally to me that I should do something using AI, whatever it is that I do on a daily basis. Because I'm conditioned to doing things a certain way for the last, whatever, 10, 20 years. So it requires a lot of deliberate, consistent effort to shift the way you work. And the same is true for organizations also. One, there will be resistance because there is always resistance to any sort of change and new tech. But beyond that, even if people are not resistant, even if they are open about it, there is a little bit of conditioning that has happened over the years. So you need that deliberate, consistent communication, hand holding to actually shift this. This is a paradigm shift, right? From how we've been working to, let's say, working using AI is a paradigm shift in work. So that has to be reiterated consistently.
And Reina,
If I may quickly add to that.
sure.
So totally support everything you were saying, Shrivardini. And I love it how you started with FOMO, right? And just want to quote a colleague of mine who always says FOMO, fear of missing out, is not an AI strategy. FOMO is not an AI strategy. You need a strategy, you need a structured approach how you tackle it as a big organization.
And as you touched upon, Vardhini touched upon the evangelization. That's very important. And when you look at your firm, like what is the playbook for the evangelization, creating that AI culture internally? That's very important. So, what is your playbook around that?
Think there's also many aspects to it, and it starts with enablement, and you need a coalition of the willing, right? There's a lot of people in the organization from any area. It doesn't even have to be people with tech affinity, with high tech affinity. I got when I was traveling here, my uncle, who's almost 80 years old, he sent me a couple of pictures that he had generated with ChatGPT and so on, right? And he had never had to do anything with tech or whatsoever. So there is plenty of people in the company you wouldn't even imagine that they are part of the first movers, that they are willing to experiment and willing to get into things, try things out themselves, utilize ChatGPT and other things during their daily work, but also bring in ideas of what could be processes, what could be use cases to be leveraged with AI, right? So identify this coalition of the willing, and take them with you, enable them, take them forward, and somehow give them room, give them a community, moderate that, and then there's already a lot of bottom-up power, so to say. And then at the same time, you need the bottom-up approach of really setting direction, of identifying first initial use cases and communicate that accordingly. And not only, again, the tech focus of what was done or how it was done. That's also important, especially for everyone in tech who's more engaged in, oh, cool, what did we do here and how did we do that? But also, what was the benefit? What was the value created from that? Additional point, ideally don't start with any use cases that makes people or manual work obsolete, because that might have the opposite effect, right? People getting more skeptical, more pessimistic about it. Do with something really where you're creating new services, new things. Can give one concrete example. For example, if this day you go to a shop, and I've been to a couple of shops here in Bangalore and in Mumbai over the last days for home appliances. If you go there, you want to buy a refrigerator, if you want to buy a washing machine, they all have labels on them now: smart, intelligent, with AI, and so on, right? So you have to play that game along. So you have to create those use cases. You have to think of what is a first product feature, for example, and then market it accordingly and give the stage to it within the company and across.
And in this journey, when you're looking at building the new products, definitely you're looking for the partnerships. Now, to decide on the partnerships is an important angle. Look at the frameworks or the filters to decide with whom you will partner. How you make that decision? What are the criteria that you look at to make, like, let's say, to make a fridge smart AI? You need to partner with a lot of the technology partners or the services firm at the back end. How you make that decision that with whom you will make a partnership?
Huh. That's a tricky one, because that really highly depends. It depends really on the use case. It depends on the technical environment that you're acting within, right? It depends on established relationships. Obviously, in many of the areas, we do have implementation partners, we do have development partners. They also develop along. So ideally, if they know us, if they know the environment, if they can easily understand the use case, it's the easiest thing to take the existing ones along. That's usually the preferred option when doing the partnering. If we go for selection, there's two things. So also in SBSH, we have a dedicated department that's called the Startup Kitchen. And that's a separate unit that is directly assigned to the global CEO of the company. So they do have the exposure, the visibility to the top management, and they continuously screen for opportunities, for partners to go along with that enrich us, that bring knowledge into the game, and so on. And via them, we do have structured processes in terms of who do we proceed with, who not, and so on.
So yeah, only like he touched upon the startup kitchen. Like, how are you seeing the ecosystem that went to partner or buy? What are the key frameworks or the criteria that companies are looking at? Any thoughts around that?
Again, Rajat, and the way I look at it, and way I was
Yeah.
telling earlier was, if fundamentally, if you look at AI as producing intelligence and you're creating a factory for it, your decision metrics on partnering,
You have to.
sorry, so I was saying that, fundamentally, if you look at AI as producing intelligence and you're building a factory to support that production, your decision metrics on that is easy to understand now, right? So let's break it down from partnership. You'll obviously partner for building that AI factory machinery. Right, because that's not your core. Even if you're building a big biscuit factory, you're not going to build the machinery for making the biscuit, right? That's not your core foundation. You will build that partnering with a factory machinery builder for you. That would be the infrastructure, the compute, all of those. You would then build the models which differentiates you, right? That's where you put your proprietary data into it. You put your core company intelligence to train that and build that core differentiator for you. That's your secret sauce. And then you build and buy based on the non-strategic nature of the supporting functionalities from available service providers, and look at this with an approach of whether they bring in the three C's, right? The competency to partner with you and deliver the value which is required for you. Do they have the processes to support that partnership and the culture for that? And then do they have enable you to maintain that, add value to the core which you are working on? Now, Professor very nicely touched up on the organizational structure which is evolving, and the scheming of how do you communicate this into the core organization. Obviously, leadership commitment is absolutely required. This is not fire it and forget it type of an infrastructure outlook, right? So that commitment needs to flow down. Again, when you're looking at it as your factory, you are now looking at building that intelligence and then deploying and applying it. Two functionalities, right? So applying, you teach people how to use it, leverage it. It makes your life easy. right? And more productive. So that's pretty straightforward. Guide them, train them, and do that. But the core foundational thing, which is more critical, particularly for the audience here, given that it is more the capability centers and global systems integrators out here, is you would need to build a capacity for building AI. Otherwise, software will write software, and what will you do? Right? So that core skilling to build AI is fundamentally what a good percentage of your skill base need to transform themselves into. Now, on the startup ecosystem, we do a lot of work. I manage the startup ecosystem for the region. Our incubator is a virtual incubator which manages the relationship with the startup from just an idea all the way up to scaling them to what they are, including companies like OpenAI. We find them to the biggest disruptors. Some of them are sitting who has become big now, biggest disruptors in the AI scenario, which is going to come. India is pretty big with that ecosystem. So I think partnering with them becomes an extremely solid opportunity for you for non-strategic core functionalities within your big operation base itself. For an FSI, GCC, enabling a bunch of your routine processes with a core strategic startup which is focused on registration tech, for example, or processing tech, becomes amazingly great for you, right?
Your answer.
Just wanted to add because you inspired some other things also and got me thinking, right? So obviously it also the topic of partnership strongly depends on the environment that you're looking a partner for. And today at the keynotes, for example, you saw various models, like you have the infra, the model, and the agent layer, right? On which of these are you? What are you actually looking for a partner for? Also internally, Bosch Siemens Home Appliances, we apply also a framework towards AI use cases where you say we have three areas. We do have deploy, we have reshape, and we have invent. Deploy means really deploying standalone AI solutions, buying a tool with AI capabilities and giving it to the users for a certain use case, but it has AI built in accordingly. Also, just applying ChatGPT or other large language models in the intranet. So in an internal instance, but towards the users of the company, but deploying more or less a standard AI solutions. That's the deploy scenario. For that, you need different partnerships than when you go for invent, where you really want to build your own solution and look for a implementation development partner accordingly. And then there is the biggest area actually in the middle, which is the reshape, which is using existing enterprise processes and building on existing enterprise software. For example, we as a large manufacturing company, we have a lot of SAP and Microsoft technology and all that. And obviously, probably like most of you, not everything on the most modern cloud version, right? We are not yet with S/4HANA in the cloud and so on. So no AI functionality yet usable there. But this is where we need to get to, and we don't need just the partners to enable the AI, but first to transform our system landscape also towards that in order to utilize the standard functionality that comes from all the vendors accordingly, and then to bring that into action.
But an important aspect to that is that within the deploy, do you have the talent ready for that? Like someone has deployed, but someone has to use the solutions. Do you see it as a challenge or all is set for that also? It's an important question.
Um, Honest answer, so. So again, I think there's like the coalition of the willing who can't wait to utilize that, but you also have to take those people along that say, I've been doing it always like this, right? And to sell it not only it's change management in the end, right? If you're changing the system, if you changed the system 10 years ago, replaced an old system by a new one, you had to do change management. Now if you're changing something towards more AI infused, you also have to do change management. And how does change management work? You don't just say now it's different, but you also have to tell a little bit the reasons why and the benefits and the value it brings for the company, but also for the individual people involved.
And Vadini, like, I'm sure you want to add to that.
Yeah.
That's a question to you.
Yeah. Just picking up on this whole build versus buy versus partnering decision, right? I mean, for a long time we have debated build versus buy, and we almost make it seem like it's an either or choice. It is not. And then, of course, for a long time it was build versus buy. Then we said no, partnership is very important as well. So build or buy or partner. So we have moved away from a world of or to a world of and today. right? It's all about embracing these paradoxes. These are not dichotomous choices. You do this or that. Companies have to do both. You have to build, you have to buy when you need to, and you have to partner. So it really has moved in that direction. So, and never has it been so important for companies to develop partnerships as a core capability, right? How do you forge successful partnerships? That itself is a capability. Not everybody can do it. I work with a lot of young companies, young ventures. They're very scared of partnering, right? I mean, because the moment you say you're partnering with somebody, uh, you know, you have one more person to take along. It's not easy. It's easy sometimes to say, okay, I'll just do it all on my own. But partnership unlocks a lot of value. It also reduces the risk. Your upfront financial outlay is going to come down significantly. You're spreading out the risk. So there are all kinds of good reasons why you should embrace partnership as an important strategy. That's number one. But even as you partner, and maybe to some extent even as you buy, the build part is important, because there's this idea of what we call in the academic parlance as absorptive capacity, right? So you can only absorb something if you have a certain level of knowledge in that space. So unless you have a certain level of AI capability, no matter whether you partner, whether you buy, you're not going to be able to absorb that and make good of that. So I think it is important to remember that. Uh, so you have to build some, and I want to go back to what Reena said earlier about if it's your core competence, if it's something that is very core to you, then yes, you should probably build. But if it's something that you want to quickly, use to either catch up, somebody is snapping at your heels, you have competition is heating up, a buy strategy is probably more useful. Partnerships take a little longer than the buy strategy, so it you need to invest a little more time and effort into it, but they are great if you are looking at a horizon 2 to 3 years from now. If you want to take a punt on how the world is going to look and what it takes for me as in my company to succeed in that future state of business, then partnership is a great strategy. And partnerships are not new. Companies have been partnering for various things for many years now, right? And there is enough research, there's enough knowledge today, practitioner knowledge as well, on how you should partner, how you should choose the right partner, and so on and so forth, right? So there's the 5 C's of partnering strategy, which is there complementarity? Is your partner competent? Are you compatible? Meaning, can you actually work together well? Um, There's congruence, meaning you have the same goals. And finally, founder to founder or CEO to CEO, is there good chemistry? So these are fairly well known, but the competence piece becomes very important when it comes to AI, because it's not just about the competence here and now. It's also about whether your partner is really at the edge of AI development and is able to sort of help you be on the frontier.
And you brought a new term in the room, the observability index.
Adaptive capacity.
Capacity, sorry. And what is needs to done to increase that capacity? How it can accelerate? What is the playbook around that?
So absorptive capacity is simply, I mean, I briefly mentioned about it. It's like you cannot, there was a time when, for example, the IT functions in companies were super lean, right? Companies almost did not have, they just had 2 people in the IT group and everything was outsourced. I think that will not work for AI, right? You need to have a certain level of expertise within, which means to some extent you have to invest on build. That's the, and when you do some build, then obviously you will have that absorptive capacity.
Training or add?
When I say absorptive capacity, do you understand the tech? Do you have the common vocabulary? Can you work with a partner? All of those things.
Training or add to that, like what Radhani mentioned about this.
Um, we, I mentioned earlier, right? Taking people along. This is the core thing. And one thing I think that also has to be understood really from the top is also to make room for experimentation. For me, AI projects also closely connected to data science projects in many times. It's a little bit like venture capital, right? How does venture capital work? You have 1 million startups, you invest in them, and with most of them, you may lose money, they go bankrupt, but some of them become a unicorn and they balance out all the others that you did. And this is the same as a company, that sometimes you have to accept that, you have to make room for that. Not everything will be the super, super big case. Not everything will be successful for technical reasons, for people related reasons whatsoever. So there's many reasons why certain things fail, but some of them you have to make successful. And I think you have to count in also. And I think this goes along with this absorption capacity, that also you have this cultural readiness to accept not everything will go right. By the way, IT projects also not always have been successful, and it's the same for AI projects. So I think you have to live with that.
And only if we come to you, and all this technology requires a lot of investments, and everyone is looking for the ROI. But if you have to set a rule for the AI investments today, for the to today to protect agility over the next 5 years, let's say 4 to 5 years, what would that rule be?
Um, I see, my core foundation thought is the same, right? The moment you treat um, this as production of intelligence, right? It's no more cost. It's driving your profits, right? The more intelligence, which is critical for your function, you produce, just like in the factory, you produce more. Uh, the the more you produce and the more profits you make, the more intelligence, which is core foundational to your company, you make, the more profit it drives. Your second consideration then is, how does it reduce cost for your other operations? Right. So, and then obviously the third consideration is, how do you mitigate risk out of it? With this lens in mind, it really is not a question of cost outlook. That said, if you have to look at an enterprise today and scale it, I would invest into building sovereign capabilities within the enterprise for my core intelligence requirement and build that AI factory. I've built it on an open standards for open standards ecosystem. Um, Build it with the open modular way, because you're not building a very rigid factory. You need to build a adaptable factory assembly line, right, for your core foundational intelligence building. And then, like Ma'am was saying, you have established principles of partnering. So if your data center needs to be built immediately, you need to partner with the data center infrastructure provider for that. Or if your velocity to time to solution requirement is higher, you might look at the hyperscaler for that, because they have readiness for that, right? So you definitely need to scale and look at it from a profit perspective rather than a cost perspective. It changes the lens. AI is going to be extremely strategic. It's core foundational to the entire operations of your enterprise moving forward, and that core is not going to drop in value. It's only going to steeply increase in value.
And when you buy or partner, how do you retain control without falling into the vendor dependency? That's very important. Like, how do you ensure those things?
That's a tricky one. Um, so the most important thing, I think, is not giving too much control really outside, right? So you have to staff the activity, the project properly, and also consider the availability of chipping in internally. Like, if you don't have anyone internal available to be involved and to steer the thing, to absorb the thing, to get a hold of the whole thing that you're doing, you better delay it. You don't do it, but wait until you get the person in place in order to steer that accordingly, and then really closely collaborate. And then, I mean, don't want to dive into contractual things in terms of, right, who does the intellectual property belong to, and so on. There you can learn a lot, obviously, from traditional software development projects as well. You had the same questions there accordingly. But I think this is the main point, really, to have the internal capability, capacity, steering available also to it. And don't do it like many companies do it with many projects. There is a person already 120% busy. Let's add another 20% to do this project part-time with the small finger or what is left of it, right? So really put attention to it. Either prioritize it accordingly or don't do it.
I only you interact a lot with the developer community. Like a straightforward question is, India is ready to take up the mega interesting, the advanced projects on AI to solve the industry use cases or specific problem statements by the public sector? Where do you see the developer ecosystem in India as of today?
Um, see, my favorite country is the biggest producer of biological intelligence. And our mothers, sisters, daughters know how to train this biological intelligence, right? The new AI is all about training and simulated algorithm, right? It just is not writing code. And if we can produce 1.3 billion, we can produce a good amount of solid, high quality AI out of this country. Our strategic objective in the next 2, 3 years, in my opinion, if you have to curve out of where we are, has to become a net producer of AI. The capability metrics in the country is extremely good, but it's very narrow and channelized. And the reason for that is because we have been in the information processing era building software. And when software is writing software, arbitrage is not a value proposition anymore. If Robert is writing it for you, Robert can be anywhere in the world. And hence you need to reskill. So there is a peak of the curve pyramid. Competency is extremely high, and bottom, which is not so good. They are applying AI. The top is capable of building AI. And I think we need to build that top's competency downwards and across our ITC, ITS environment, particularly in the global capability centers and the global systems integration companies. But I'm very confident of our capability. And just to give you a factual number on that, when I started my journey with NVIDIA, um, the first thing I took up was to focus on education and spreading education within engineering colleges and building capability for them with AI labs. We established in just 1 year itself around 100 plus AI lab driven courses in it. You've seen the transformation of engineering colleges now coming out with AI specialized courses on that, right? We skilled almost 200,000 people in the country in span of just 4 or 5 years. But now our courses are free and paid are just absorbed like crazy by the country. Skilling is happening. But whether you are skilling at the depth required is the question. And do you have the underlying infrastructure to support that skilling? And that needs a complete transformation of our education ecosystem, the internal ecosystem within the companies to enable that skilling for building AI. Yeah. But developer competency, absolutely no doubt.
Got it. Varun, you want to add something to that?
Yeah, I mean, as when you were speaking, I think actually AI presents a great opportunity to the GCCs, right? For a long time, I think we played the cost arbitrage game, and we've pushed beyond that frontier, right? A lot of GCCs have evolved beyond being just cost arbitrage centers towards taking more ownership, in fact even complete product ownership and so on and so forth. But it's a constant struggle, let's be very honest. It's a continuous negotiation and conflict um, that goes on with the headquarters. There is competition from other subsidiaries. So I think all of that's, I mean, it's here to stay, it's not going away. But I think with AI, if you're able to jump onto this bandwagon soon enough, and Uni's been saying that we do have that capability, it can really be the differentiator. It can really differentiate Indian uh, entities of the larger multinational from other entities, right? And it can become the plank on which you're able to add greater value to the corporation. So, and I think I'm starting to see that happening in a few GCCs where there is a significant AI agenda mandate that is sitting here in India. And I think that's something that's very good to see, and I hope that becomes a more common occurrence.
Great. I think so. It was a great discussion. And it's very difficult to say that whether it's a build or buy or partnership. I think so. The and plays an important role. That in this journey, it's a combination of all the three. So I think so many of us have the playbook also how to go after that. So I truly appreciate. Thank you so much for your time today for this wonderful discussion. Thank you. Thank you for the audience.
Thank you for joining us.
Thank you.
That was a very incredible session, Rajat. I would request you to please give away a token of thanks from Zinnov to all our speakers.
Three, two, one.
Everybody is still settling in, I guess. What an amazing session, though. I first thought I'll take a few key takeaways from the session, but eventually I realized, I'll have to watch the recording again because there were so many key insights from these conversations, right? But now we move to a deeper question. What does it really take to become a true AI native? Because while many companies are using AI, only a few are actually built to think. Please join me in welcoming our next set of panel. First one here is Arun Arumugam, Senior MD, TIA Global Capitals, Niladri Ray, Country Head and VP of Engineering, Flexera, Vijayata Nath, VP of GBS and Pune Site Leader, Ecolab, Akshat Mandloi, CTO, Smallest AI, and a session chair for this one is Manali Devumik, Principal from Zinnov. Thank you.
Hello. Hi, everyone. Good afternoon. Welcome to the 18th edition of Zinnov Confluence. The theme this year, leadership, limitless leadership in the age of AI. Now, I have four limitless leaders with me today talking about the topic built to think the anatomy of AI native enterprise. Now, what do we mean by an AI native enterprise? No, 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 no. It's not just having AI siloed integrating into the system. It is having AI in all levels of the enterprise. To start with, it is data. It is very important to, organize the data into a format wherein your AI models can be built on the data, and at the same time, that data can be used to integrate and train your AI models. Secondly, AI is used to build new products and solutions, which is more customer focused, and it will help in better ROIs. Next, we should embed AI in your operations, regular operations, from hiring, supply chain, procurement, R&D. In every format, AI will help in making better decision making and having augmentation and having better ways of doing it faster. And lastly, we should have AI design different rules and roles, and most importantly, in the culture of the organization. So, having said all, it is integrating into the DNA of your enterprise. And to start with, my first question to Arun. We hear the term AI native everywhere, but what does it look like inside an enterprise?
Thanks, Manali. Uh, Good afternoon, everyone. I just want to take a minute to tell about the firm I come from because that'll set the context of what our vision is. And I come from a company called TIAA, and it's mostly an acronym which many people don't know in India. It's a US-based retirement services firm. But I get the attention when I tell who our clients are. For example, Princeton, Yale, Harvard, Cornell, for example, are our clients. And Albert Einstein was our client. So that's how we get our graduates to join us when we go against Googles and Amazons of the world. So we are a legacy firm. We are 107 years old, a Fortune 100 company. We specialize in retirement services, very regulatory controls. We specialize in the US markets. And we have GCC in India for technology operations and shared services. So what's our vision? Vision is to retire with dignity. So if you take because we serve the teachers and healthcare professionals, etc. Who, and in US, as you all know, after retirement, people live for 40, 50 years, and they struggle during retirement because it's a very market-based economy. And we have some unique products. We partner with them. So we have a good corpus outflow during the retirement so they can live with dignity. That's our core mantra, right? So whatever we do, we try to combine with the vision statement of that. Retire with dignity, retire inequality, and help those poor. Still, we in the US markets, 40% of the household doesn't have enough retirement income. So that's the market that we want to attack. So said that, how AI can enable us. By the way, I just listened to the build, buy, and partner. We are a build firm. We have a very strong technology shop, of course, but we do buy and partner as needed. So with AI, we treat AI as a transformative tool. So what is transformation? We wanted to strengthen our operations. We want to enhance our client experiences. And we don't treat this a technology challenge. It is more of a it's a human transformation journey, right? So I want to borrow something what Vamsi said this morning when he said, "What is the AI disruption going to do?" He said, "It's not replacing; it's increasing the limit of the human." So that's exactly what we are trying to do. So but we are trying to do in augmented fashion, but not replacement. So that's our clear goal, right? So I talked about the vision, how you're going to attack it. For example, I want to take one example. Google Cloud Contact Center AI is one of our partners for the last 5 years. We engineered the entire national contact center. Our demography is 70 years plus people mostly. So they need a human connect. So our NCC, we are given the right tools not only for summary, the call summaries, but more the sentiment analysis, intent analysis through multi-channels. We have the multiple channels like web, mobile, and IVR. So how we give those summaries to them help the NCC associates to deal with our clients much better, much compassionately, with more empathy. So that's one of our things. And another important thing we want to talk is because we are a financial services firm. We have a huge privacy act. We are controlled by the regulators. So for us, the guardrails are very, very important. Right. So we have a responsible AI policy, which governs our entire TAA, our associates like Nuveen, which is asset management or wealth management, etc. We also coach our people on responsible policies, trainings, and approval processes. Right. And then you also have the human in loop process where we ensure that we do the right thing in terms of biases and hallucinations. So a few examples I want to call out is we have a fund reporting division where we have to file an SEC report where there's 700 control points. Now it's entirely controlled by AI. We have 40% reduction in our total workforce usage, and instead, entire compliance checks is done by the AI engines. And we have one good product that we built called Agentic SDLC, where it helps the developers to generate code in all the SDLC cycle, starting from requirements to the testing and implementation. And there's also financial crime compliance where we have to check the crime compliance alerts. We have about more than 100,000 alerts in a year, but we know 97% are false positives. So how do we really, that was a huge human effort. Now we are doing everything in automated fashion, so we catch those false alerts much ahead of time. There's some of the use cases. So in a nutshell, we are aligned with the vision. We need guardrails. There's a lot of human empathy and human journey that we are focusing on our associates and the stakeholders. And we are focusing on transformation and not augmentation.
Thanks, Arun. And I think that's a very, very important point. One of is responsible AI, and we should be hearing more about that. Over to Vijayata. What's your take on an AI native enterprise?
Sure. Thanks for that, Manali. And Arun, I couldn't agree more with you. So, I come from Ecolab. Ecolab is a sustainability organization. We are a 100-year-old organization, and the GCC that we have is like a startup. So, AI native, you asked about what it actually looks like in an organization. Yes, there is the utopic view of what an AI native organization is and what actually it looks like chaos. I'll tell you about that. And with legacy systems, with data which is fragmented, with the skepticism and the fear that people have in terms of adoption of AI, the leadership buy in, all that exists in some shape and form. And I'm not going to speak holistically for all the organizations. Everybody is in their journey, right? And ours has just started. I'll speak for Ecolab. Ours has just started, but there are things that we are doing which is, phenomenal in the sense. So we have we so from sustainability perspective, we have water solutions, and I'll give you an example for you to understand what exactly we do at Ecolab. So we all use, I mean, i- technology, right? And then there are these data centers. There's a lot of heat that gets generated. Every keystroke is leading into heat generation, emission of greenhouse gases, etc. But to ensure that the heat levels are maintained, there are cooling towers, and for cooling towers you need a lot of water, and the cooling towers operate at a certain efficiency of water usage. And if the purity of the water is not right, the parts of the cooling towers will get corroded or they'll break, and then the water usage and the wastage is too much, right? And then the heat generation is not maintained, etc., etc. So Ecolab has solutions that maintains the purity of that water at certain levels so that the cooling tower is using the water effectively. We have IoT devices, 3D Tresar, it's our technology, which is connected to all such cooling towers. And it is monitoring the purity level of the water at regular intervals. At every 7 seconds, there is data that is getting generated. It is being monitored centrally by our team in Pune and monitoring all of that. So there's the real live data that is coming in. And if the purity level goes up and down, there again Ecolab builds those chemistries which get injected. So it's remote monitoring, remote injection. That's what is happening. I mean, I did talk about where we are in terms of our AI native journey, but we've also done this. So I wanted to bring the spectrum of both the sides, but it's a journey, I would say.
Absolutely. And, Akshat might be thinking, I've been solving a lot of chaos, right? So, with your AI agents, Akshat, over to you. What's your take?
Yeah, so I think with Smallest, we are a year and a half old startup. So we were born in the AI first era, right? So we were not just like dealing with we were not dealing with legacy systems. We were building the AI first systems for enterprises to adapt. So what Smallest does is we build foundational AI voice models which can automate your contact center operations and handle your support use cases, handle use cases like transcriptions, helping companies like them to provide the support where they need so that you can reach out to more people. So we were born in an AI first era, right? All of our systems, we always thought how can we do 10x of what used to happen, right? So I think that has been the strategy since then, and we are now enabling enterprises with our voice AI models to do the same. So we sit with them, we partner with them, we work very closely with them, understand their use cases, as she mentioned, right? It's a chaos, right? So we help reduce the chaos because we have been AI first. So we understand the nuances, bring it all together, and help them deliver the outcomes much better, much faster, much efficient. So yeah, I think that's where we are and that's what we do.
Thank you, Akshat. And we have Niladri from Flexera. So, Niladri promised to add a fun element in this. So, Niladri, what's the fun in this chaos?
The first fun element is I'm looking for AI help to help you with the pressure after these three great points. I'm looking for Devin in the room. Is Devin? No, Devil. Devin, anybody knows Devin? Devin's not in the room. Devin, you got to invite next time.
Yes, I
The
will.
new agent that is supposed to solve everything. So yeah, I great points. Couldn't agree more. I represent a company that we kind of have the responsible privilege of being in the top decile of companies. I know there's a rule of 40 discussion going on. We are a rule of 60 shop, and extremely proud about the 100,000 customers we have, which is the entire estate of technology buyers and technology sellers, which puts us in a very unique position in terms of maximizing technology value, whether you're a technology buyer or a seller. But I'll just shift a bit from a perspective of a couple of things I want to share with you, a couple of stories, which I think for all the good stuff that's happening, the data shows that we talk about AI first, but even from cloud first point of view, today's cloud spend wastage, which is a multi-billion-dollar market,
has just gone up by 50 basis points because of the AI wastage that's on top of it. So there's something which has to be looked at. I'll tell you two more stories. One which I've been fortunate to advise a firm, and the other one I was part of a group discussion that we discussed is when do software normally gets shipped in a week? When does software normally get shipped, released? Which day of the week? Anybody would you tell me? Friday. So this company did a fantastic thing of they looked at the data. They had a time to velocity acceleration program. They looked at all the data. Data shipped on Friday evening, and they were like, bingo. So engineering team, we got to beat this, right? Put all the training data, put all the LLMs, SLMs to use, everything out there, and they started releasing it on Friday morning. And they started celebrating. This is fantastic, right? After celebrations died down in a week or two, what they realized is that what they had missed out was while they were earlier shipping stuff on Friday evening, what happened after that, the Saturday and the Sunday and the Monday was chaos, production incidents, call engineers being called, everybody being frustrated, including the customer, and that data set was not there. What they just did in the entire process is they added a layer of chaos now on the Friday. So people who were like cribbing about now I don't have the weekend to work were not even now happy about the Friday. I'll give you another example. This is about a customer service chatbot which was tested in one local market and was 80% correct. And the 80% correct customer said, "Wow!" And 3 months there was celebration, and then they started expanding into multiple markets after that. And as they started expanding to multiple markets, very soon what happened was, and I mean, no prize for guessing. The first market was North America. They went next to Europe and APAC. And then suddenly the customer sentiment started moving into, I'm sorry, but this chatbot doesn't understand me. Why? I mean, no prize for guessing. There was no language support. And the fact of the matter is that data set was not even included out there. So the point I'm trying to make, I was joking with her, I might just turn this topic on its head. And I know consulting companies would love to have AI native frameworks, but from my point of view, the first step is you could be AI native, but is your AI human native? Right? Because at the end of the day, the word A in AI is artificial. So artificial intelligence is to solve real problems. And from my point of view, real intelligence is not to solve real problems alone, is to ensure that you don't create one in the first place. So I think the focus should be about, and I think we're doing very well with Flexera, we are on a journey ourselves, is the AI that you're creating is a human native in the first place. I'll leave it there.
Thanks, Niladri, for scaring a bit. For now, let's solve the chaos a bit with our second question. And Vijeta, it goes to you first. Where do most companies hit friction when trying to embed AI into the core? Is it data quality, lack of ownership, or something else?
So I don't want to be a wet blanket on this very, very invigorating topic, right? It is the buzzword. And what you heard from all of us wasn't too, inspiring or motivating or, encouraging. And I'm telling you, what I'm going to talk about right now is also not just being realistic, honestly speaking, right? Data quality, lack of ownership, can be those challenges that can impede the implementation of AI integration. But I think there are things beyond that also. But I'll touch upon these two aspects as well. I mean, I did talk about data in organizations is in all shape and form, fragmented, outdated, uh, unstructured. It's available in silos. Departments will own their data, maintain their data in their own data architecture and not share it across, right? So the whole cross pollination and usage of data for your AI models that are getting trained gets ineffective. The lack of ownership and accountability, right? Everybody wants to be an owner. Oh, I am doing, this is my data. I am implementing AI strategy. Marketing will say, supply chain will say, I'm implementing AI. So there is a lack of clarity of roles and responsibility. Who is developing the strategy? Who is implementing? Where does all these cross functional teams come into the play? Buy in from the leadership, right? Leadership in, guilty of it. At times, they hear the buzzword and they say, let's implement AI. Now, what does AI even stand for? That awareness. And again, you know, um, leadership is at a different generation altogether. People who are adopting, implementing, and living are at a different generation. So there's that understanding level at the leadership level. So if you have a lack of buy in or the commitment from the leadership, then there are those mixed signals in terms of the priorities and the strategies that are coming in. We talked about the culture and the mindset, right? I think there is so much fear and skepticism about if AI comes, there's job displacement. Yes, it is a reality, but how much of it? Do we understand the efficacy of AI implementation and how jobs will get transformed? We previous panel did talk about that, right? Also, the separation from traditional processes. We are so comfortable in running processes in a way that it has been running. So separating that process and implementing AI on top of it is a challenge. Technical, right? Technology, legacy systems, they were never designed for AI to be implemented. And I think that's where, you come in and you solve that chaos for all of us. Um, Scalability, right? I think AI at a small scale at times is very successful, but when scaled up, it may not work. That, may not work can be a dissuasion for rest of the organization to further invest and go on that journey. And the last bit, I think, we talked about responsible AI, ethical AI. I think it becomes so challenging for organization to navigate those regulatory requirements of how AI is being deployed can be such an exhaustive process for organizations. So I think when you talk about, what could be the challenges and frictions while we are implementing, these are all of those, and I'm not saying all of them are there, but these are some of the examples that can derail the whole integration process.
Quite a few takeaways. Amit, what has been some fiction points in your transformation journey?
Akshat. Arun.
Sorry.
Arun, sorry.
Uh, Thanks, Manali. Yeah, yeah. Okay. So obviously, I have to start with data. Um, 20 years ago, also I've seen seminars where people say data is the something that we have to conquer, and still we are doing it. I'm sure a decade from now we may be still talking about it. So data governance is the first friction, and uh, with respect to AI, we have partnered with AWS, Domino, and we have a footprint to have the federated data models where the business controls the data product and business products, but the central governance come from the central data team. But still, we have again, I have to go to the retirement services organization because the intent and the content what we use is highly regulated. It started with the California Consumer Privacy Act. Now every state is following it. So we're very careful about what data we use and how we use it. So that's added a extra parameter into the whole decision about the data. So obviously, data governance is always a friction. There's no single source of data, and we will never conquer that because there is no standardization in a large firm like us or any large firm. There's a disparate sets of data each within the teams. Of course, this is a touchy topic, but everybody knows about it. Within teams, there's not enough communication to make sure the data is standard. People reinvent the wheel within the organization. That's why the data become very chaotic at some point in time. That's the first thing. And second is the change management. Change has two parts to change. One is the ecosystem change. So, like garbage in, garbage out, right? So even if ecosystem is not strong enough, you can put a lot of AI engines on top of it. You don't have the right infra to power it, or you don't have the right models to work on it. It's all going to be shambles. So the ecosystem investment is absolutely important, right? And we have a program, for example, called Tetris, which started 4 years ago, called Technology Ecosystem Transformation, which is cloud first, digital first, API driven, secured by design, and data powered, right? And it's going well, and that helps in the AI adoption as well. We started at the right time. And next is a human transformation, which is very, very important, right? Because we can say we are always good at saying, what we should do, how we should do, but we don't take time to explain the why. And so it's very important to tell the people why we are doing what we are doing and why AI and how they should adopt. Because even if you take an organization, there are people who adopt it at different scale. Some will be immediately jump the gun. They want to download a few things and start working on it. Some will say that, this is another buzzword. It will go away. Let me keep doing my work. And if you take the business, they're probably caught between this. They can't say no to technology, and that they have the business priorities. If I go and say I want to clean up the tech debt, I want to improve this architecture, for them that's their lost priority. So we have to go and convince them. So it's a lot of empathy towards associates, stakeholders, business to make sure they understand why we are doing what we are doing. That's our second friction. And the last one is, especially with youngsters, we see this, the innovation speed at which they have to go. Actually, responsible AI policy can throw a wrench into that. But that's the way it is. I give you a very good example. We pushed Amazon Q plugins to all the developers, and they're all raring to go. They're doing at different levels for the development of code. But recently we found a problem where when certain use cases, when they want to test, they are throwing this test case into the S3 bucket. Immediately we get the DLP alerts. Okay, the cyber warning comes in that you have protected data thrown into the SLP S3 bucket. And obviously we have to stop that testing because cyber vulnerabilities are very huge. So we have to pause in those cases and say, either we clean up the data or we create a protected environment for them to test. Now, that comes with a lot of time and money. So that can frustrate the youngsters, individuals who's working on, who really want to make a difference. So these are the possible frictions that we face.
Good point. Innovation speed, I think, and we are all trying to catch up with that. Nilatri, your take.
Yeah, again, I'm out of points. Thank you to both of you. I'm reminded of, and I wasn't intending to share this, but I'll share it. So Shah Rukh Khan was sharing this about what his father was telling him one point in time. You should do this, you should climb mountains, you should do this and all. Then he said that, Papa, मैं कमाल कर रहा हूँ. Then he said, जो लोग कुछ नहीं करते वो कमाल करते हैं. So to your point on friction, I think there is a certain element of kamal processes and people who follow those processes for years, you could call it legacy or whatever, that needs to be addressed. To me, it's an elephant in the room conversation. Ties back to the human native AI conversation as well. And from my point of view, we talk about this innovation curve, adoption curve. There's always, early adopters and laggards and all. But there's this fat middle out there. We say people who sit on the fence, and typically they are the ignored party. And as an organization, for example, we've acquired a lot of organizations. We've grown inorganically. The trick is, how do you take everybody along? I think it was talked about last time as well, because you're going to be as strong as your weakest link, and everybody has some nerve in themselves which is special. So to me, organizations that recognize this friction early on and is able to figure out how to activate those nerves make a big difference. And I'll give you a lot of examples. The business we are in, if any company you are in, and this is a simple question, right? If you ask for a simple license, I want to do Claude, I want to do Copilot, I want to do Gemini, how many teams you think are involved before you actually get it? There's the IT team, and IT, there's an on-prem cloud, there's SRE, there's procurement, there's finance, there is HR, because the license may be required for a third-party vendor. And by the way, if you have good discovery, you might not even need the license, because if it's a cloud license, you could actually do a BYOL versus a pay-you-go. So many teams are involved. The biggest friction is that the world is collapsing. Today, my son, who's got no background in technology, he's an economics history student, uses Replit to build a website, which is part of a CT venture, which he's powering away while he's in his college. Things are changing. To me, the friction is about, you had reporting lines and you had these structures for a long time, and suddenly now the value is how you move horizontally. So organizations that are able to integrate top down, bottom up, left, right, center, left, including the voice of the customer, are the ones that get it right. And there are frameworks like OKRs and VSEMs and so many frameworks out there. But doing it meaningfully, intentionally in the flywheel in such a way that kind of starts expanding over time, I think is the way to go. And it creates tensions. And how organizations handle tensions, how organizations handle all the kamal in the process, to me, is the secret sauce.
Absolutely. And Akshat, how been able you have to track the friction so far?
I think for us, I come from a background of autonomous vehicles. I was building autonomous vehicles for Bosch. So I think I've seen all of the points here mentioned, from data security to handling data to being GDPR compliant. So I think I went through whole that journey of where all the friction points are. So while building Smallest, I think we just we knew where the friction points are. So I think, and one more thing we understood is that the data pipelines on top of which you build, I think makes you go much faster. What's important in for a AI native company or is like it, you have to be data native first, as you mentioned, right? So the moment you are data native, your iterations would become faster, and perfect AI needs many more iterations. So the faster you can do the iterations, the more better you can be in adopting and implementing AI and actually delivering value out of it. And to do faster iterations, your data pipelines have to be pretty sorted. There has to be no friction around how you exchange data within different functions, different silos of your companies, right? So I think that's the first thing we built up. Having seen, like, I mean, while I was building autonomous vehicles, we saw a scale where we had zero data coming in to like a million images coming in from vehicles every day, and our data model getting trained every day. So having seen that journey, I think we just implemented those touch points right at the right place, and I think that has served us to deliver like one of the world's fastest, best text to speech and voice AI models till now. So I think that's serving us well. Having learned all of these friction items and then implementing ground up those things. And but for I think when the systems have been in place, I think it poses a challenge for us also. So when we go to customers who have had these systems in place for a long time, as I said, right, we have to sit with them, figure out how we can impart some of the knowledge we have had while building these pipelines, and that helps a lot.
Absolutely. And I think there's no right or wrong. You need to build to learn. And that takes us to the next question. And this starts with you, Niladri. What parts of your current tech or process stack had to be completely re architected to support AI at the center, not just the edge?
So I'll take a leaf from what you said on the data native part of it, and I think, to me, organizations that are transforming versus that you're starting from scratch obviously have a different context altogether. So understanding your data becomes kind of front and center of the whole thing. And why am I saying this is, my experience, what I've seen is, typically, more often than not, most companies are very good with transaction processing systems. So we've got classic OLTP. Now, the moment you get to this aspirational value of data analytics and reporting and all the stuff around it, you move into a slightly different paradigm of what we call OLAP, online analytical processing. And there are different paradigms out there. And obviously that introduces application, constructs of duplication and redundancy and whatnot. But the important part out there in this transformation, again, there's a mindset shift, because people, if you're used to a particular way of working, then your way of working needs to change if you're in an OLAP concept. And again, in the business we are in, the cost of goods sold play a big role, because if you start putting all the load into the analytical piece, and you might think you're doing very well out there, but finally, when the bill comes to you as to how much you're burning, the ROI is not really worth it. So we've done a lot of deliberate work at understanding data lineage and how this flows from, because, and I know Snowflake and I think Databricks also probably have a panel, and there's an aspiration to go to a data lake. And then in data lake, there are elements of bronze, silver, gold in terms of what the tiers look like. So there are disciplines out there. But understanding how your data flows is very important. And I think we've done some good work. In fact, one of my colleagues, Bharat, I think he's out here, he's got a master class tomorrow. I would recommend people go and attend that, because we go deeper into that. So we worked a lot on the pipelines, because that changes the whole thing. And we've worked a lot on the UX, because in AI, in the world of AI, as you're feeding a recommendation back to the customer, it's an insight. When the insight translates to an action, you go front to back. And the data you started off with may not be the data you land up with, because as the customer starts asking you questions and comes the business context, you need to start feeding in more data. And there's a front to back regression that happens that is pretty painful. So that would be one thing. The other topic I want to talk about is agentic. Hot topic, everybody. But agentic, as some of you know, agentic just raises the bar in terms of the context and the reasoning part of it. And agentic, the moment you get there, versus a classic LLM, which would do a standard retrieval, moment you get to agentic AI, an agentic AI will look through a hierarchical data source model, because you need to look at trust, explainability, credibility, and freshness. So from that point of view, you first look at regulated data, then you look at expert data, then you look at whatever is the other data that comes from marketing copies and all that. And there's a prioritization matrix that goes in because you have to look at that, and that's a pretty deep-ended work. Now, why am I saying this is because a classical data structured based process would never work in this new context. So there are aspects that you got to tear it down completely. There are aspects you got to rewrite. But what you have to keep in mind finally, what is the customer outcome out there? Because if you have products that have got customers at risk and you don't want to start touching the main line and then obstructing the view of both your customers current as well as future, you have to be careful about it. So it's a very deep subject, but to me it is the one thing that I think we are doing it correct right now because we are focusing on the data piece, the UX piece, and the governance piece around the whole thing.
Thanks, Iladri. Akshat, your take on the architecture?
I think the architecture, as you mentioned, right, the UX has to be top notch. Like, so the more AI native the world is becoming, I think the whole goal should be how we can deliver the information to the user in a much more human native form, as you mentioned, right? So, although the features are flying in every day and you can ship features much faster, it becomes a challenge on how do you like provide the right value to your customer at the right touch point, right? So, I think that is one point I think we are thinking about a lot. Like, how do you bring all of these AI power to your customers at the end users, but at the right touch point so that they can leverage it properly. So a lot of times what happens with us is that we have a lot of hidden features which are like very nuanced, but bringing them up on the platform and like making it available to the customer exactly at the point when they need it becomes quite a challenge. So I think that is a lot of iteration that we are doing and a lot of restructuring around it. Although our pipelines, etc., as I said, right, were built AI first, but UX is something which I feel is going to be much more as important as your data and AI pipelines.
Thanks, Akshat. And I would love to hear, Vijayata and Arun as well. But the interest of time, I would want to take the last question, which is interesting, and I want to hear everyone. It's starting with Akshat. If you had to start with a clean state, what would you build differently from A1 to be day one from AI native?
I think what not in terms of what I would build differently, but I would just ship it faster is what because the way I mean the speed at which the world is moving, I think we can just deliver value much faster. So I would just focus on delivering it much faster in a much more cleaner, simpler fashion that's like that the end user just understands nicely. I think that is what I would do. So I would focus a bit more on delivering much
Faster
faster.
delivery.
Yeah.
Faster delivery. Arun, your take.
With clean slate, I have a long answer. Of course, I would put everything, all the answers together for all the questions because it's not one area will be a. We have started with a vision, obviously, the kind of company we are. So I talked about why, and we have to expand on the why to our workforce. And when I say workforce, then naturally what follows is a human element of that. With be it the stakeholders or be it our associates. Uh, Deal with empathy, take them along uh, for a greater good. That's very important. Ecosystem change is of paramount importance. Without that, AI will not take off. So we have to invest in the ecosystem transformation. Then, of course, responsible AI we talked about. We need the right guardrails. If we do all these things, then we give a classic area of where we can start our innovation, right? So, for example, I want to call out a couple of examples. We launched something called Client Tech Labs, where with the right permissions, people can go in and do piloting, do experimentations, POCs in the lab, and a few good things that came out of it. For example, we just patented one of the ideas, which I am proud that came out of India workforce and which helping the US product team. One of our flagship products by way of K-mean clustering and random forest, we identified a win-loss algorithm to point out the business that this is the cluster who can become a potential client for this new product. And it's very successfully implemented by the distribution team. That's one example. And another one is an IntelliTest framework, which is again a technology challenge for the quality engineers. When you have UI testing, when a lot of controls can keep moving around every time you have to go and do the rejigging of the test scripts. So using computer vision based automatically test gets generated in the test arena. So all those work goes away, so the teams can focus on more strategic stuff. So I would say there's no one. You have to address all the things. Even one lesser will not give the right out.
Thank you. And that's a group of things. Vijay, over to you.
Yeah, so I think we start with basics, right? And in God we trust, but for everything else we need data. So we start with data, right? If we build that data hygiene, I think Akshat will be able to ship faster. And I think he validated my understanding. So we start with the basics. And like Arun said, it is a holistic approach any which way. So for me, it starts with data.
Absolutely. Niladri, over to you.
So yeah, I think we can hire the devil. No, the devil and devil will solve all of it. But yeah, jokes apart, I think there is this pressure to do things fast can also cause a bit of this like you don't want to reinvent the wheel. And what I would strongly urge is there is a good amount of very senior market intelligence that is available today in terms of being able to figure out. Because I honestly, my thing when I look at the SaaS sprawl and when I look at this, the level of cloud sprawl and AI sprawl, this is serious. We are looking at the next wave of layoffs if we're not careful about this. And from my point of view, the two things I would say there is, I don't know how many of you are aware, but I would encourage people to look at the FinOps Foundation. It's a super cool group of very senior individuals at decision rights across the enterprise globally that are looking at how these the walls are crumbling between procurement, finance, business teams, IT, HR, and all the voices together. And how the next wave would look at how these collapsing walls will be able to better evolve in terms of decision making. And AI is a very central component in the whole thing. So one would be to look at the FinOps Foundation. And the second thing would be, I think the human part and the data part, if you get this part of it correct, and which means taking your time to be able to getting the people to be able to find ways and means to insert context into the AI and do it in a meaningful way to make your data better to be used and look at your cost of goods sold in terms of what columns actually really matter from a presentation point of view and customer context. I think it'll go a long way. So from my point of view, if you start afresh, I would definitely don't want to reinvent the wheel. I would look at a barrage of best practices and the way the disruption landscape is, figure out a way to take everybody along to solve the problem.
Absolutely. And I'm sure we all want to reinvent the wheel again. We have time for maybe one question from the audience. So, anyone, questions to the panel? Please.
Wonderful session. Manjunath here from 3M Global Technology Center. So, all of you touched up on responsible AI. I'm just curious to know, are you leveraging any tools or the frameworks from some companies that will be helpful for us?
We don't use any specific tools for responsible AI. It's like our own policy and how we implement our policy. That's it pretty much.
Perfect. One more, maybe? Anyone? You want to address?
I was supposed to say explainability, which is making the white box of the black box, is best again exerted by the person who's using the application. So you could use a tool, you could have a look at your logs, all of it is already there, but it's best the instrumentation should be done from within. That's my personal point of view.
Thank you, Niladri.
Hi, this is Sam here. I want to ask, as enterprises adopt AI native frameworks, how do they evaluate where does AI sit? Does it sit on the top layer, or does it become a part of the core engine workflow? How do you evaluate that?
Where does it start? Top layer or in the core?
I think it like for us, it's part of the core native workflow. And the way I think we are seeing with the customers also, they are also evolving and seeing it as like part of the core workflow and core processes. So that adoption is happening slowly, but it's happening carefully, as we mentioned. And there's a lot of friction. There is a lot of processes, and there's a lot of refinement that needs to happen at the foundational layer. But I think today everyone is thinking of it like a foundational piece of all of their tech and processes. So I think that's where it's gonna sit.
I would say it's at the core, but we have to also understand finally if you're doing AI, you're doing with the customer's data. And the customer is going to ask you, what are you doing with my data, depending on which geography and which. So I think the overall framework needs to be very clear. The organization needs to be very clear about what it is doing with respect to audits, its contracts, liabilities, and what happens when things go wrong. Because when things go right, it's fine. When things go wrong, it can really be very tricky. So it's definitely at the core. But the way I look at the whole thing, that core is shifting towards a very peripheral level of influence and outcome in terms of how the core gets impacted going forward.
So I want to add to it one quick thing is for us, it's in the periphery because it has to mature. So we are moving in all fronts. We are believing in certain things that are bound to happen, but we don't have enough proof how it will evolve. So until then, considering the industry we can't put it in the core. But of course, we are encouraging people to, and who knows, 5 years down the road, we'll have a huge agent force. I think the earlier speaker, one of the other speakers, telling out of 100,000, 90,000 could be agent force and 10,000 could be human force. So we may reach that point and we'll again, that time will be in the core.
My thoughts resonate with Arun. I would say it's on the edge for us as well. It depends upon the results it's going to reap for us. What Akshat is working with his customers and his organization, it's fresh and it's a journey, it's evolving. So for us, it's on the edge for now.
Thank you so much, everyone. That brings us to the end of the panel. It was lovely having you all. And the key takeaway is be AI native, but be responsible. Thank you so much.
Can we have a huge round of applause for our panel? Manali, I would also request you to please give away a token of appreciation from Zinnov to all our wonderful speakers. What an incredible set of sessions we've had this afternoon. From strategic decisions around building, buying, and partnering for AI to deeper transformation needed to become truly AI native. A huge thank of a huge thank to all our panelists for their bold ideas and real world wisdom. Thank you all for being the part of this journey. Enjoy the rest of Confluence, and I'll see you on day 2. Thank you.
Navigating things like, what data is being shared with the models, how are you working on how is the model being trained, how